Welcome. You're watching The Moody Lawyer. Justice served with experience and integrity.
Hello and welcome to The Moody Lawyer with attorney Josh Moody. With a rich background in law enforcement and a comprehensive legal career spanning criminal justice, personal injury, and civil matters, Josh offers a unique perspective on navigating the complexities of the legal system. I am your host, Kevin Rosenquist, and today's episode is How Much Is My Case Worth? Breaking down the factors that determine your settlement. Josh, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so I'm guessing this is probably one of the questions that you get asked the most. How much is my case worth? What is the first thing you consider as a personal injury attorney when you hear that?
I will give you the attorney answer, and it depends.
It depends. I was going to say it.
It depends. I hear that so often. Yeah, it's one of those things probably, every profession probably has it, and that's where you hear that question so often, it becomes secondhand nature. But that's probably the question in my field is, what's my case worth? Yeah,
sure,
for sure. That's what people always want to know. And even on other cases, whether it be civil cases or whether it be buying a car, everybody wants to know, what's it going to cost? What's it going to cost? And what am I going to get out of it? Yeah. And unfortunately, this is just one of those businesses and one of those areas where you just don't know. Every case is different. Every fact pattern is different. Every insurance company is different. Even though injuries may be similar, every medical report is different. So it depends. And I think I've also said before too, and I tell people that the case that you come in with today, the case that you walk in when you walk into my office is not the case you're going to leave with 1, 2, 3, 4 years from now. Mm-hmm. Things always change, and it doesn't matter how small or how big. That's just the nature of the business.
Yeah. A lot of different factors, a lot of different, unique factors and things like that. And, one of the things I think I would guess that makes it really difficult is you have your, the financial value of economic damages. You got your medical bills and lost wages, easier to calculate that kind of stuff versus the non-economic damages such as pain and suffering. How do you put together sort of, I don't want to say a package, but like an idea of understanding what that financial value is with all these different factors?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, and I'm glad you said that, because that's a key there is we don't know what your medical bills are the day you walk in, right? I mean, you got injured, you got transported to the hospital or something. You don't get a bill right then and there. It might take weeks or months to get those bills to come in. And then you're going to continue to treat for several weeks and go back to the doctor, maybe go to a specialist. So you don't know what your bills are the day you walk in. So how do we know what your case is valued at the day you walk in? So that's a very key part that people just don't. I mean, it makes sense when you think about it. What's my car worth? Well, I don't know. Do you have an engine? Do you have a transmission? How many miles does it have? We don't know. So right there is just a big part that people don't understand. And then, like you said, the second part is what's non-economic damages. And our biggest one is pain and suffering, right? Pain and suffering is where we make the most amount of money. That's where attorneys make the most money. That's why we work on a contingency, because the more we get you for pain and suffering, the more you're going to get overall as well. So that's our bread and butter. But again, without knowing your medical records, seeing what the injuries are, where they are, knowing what your case is worth right away. Anybody who puts a number on a case the first day, I just wouldn't trust. I wouldn't trust at all. So you don't know. Like I said, the case you walk in with today is not the case you leave with 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years, however long it might take.
Just because so many things unfold along the way.
So many things unfold along the way, but why is it that one person goes to the emergency room for a rear end accident and gets a $10,000 bill, and another person goes to the same emergency room, same facts, same everything, and their bill is only $1,000? It depends on what the injuries are. It depends on what the doctors are doing. It depends on what tests they run. So we don't know, and we don't get those bills for a few days, few weeks, few months sometimes. And then how long does it take? If you go to your doctor and your doctor says you're okay and they release you, well, that's different than when a doctor says, hey, you should probably go to a specialist. Well, now you got to pay the specialist. Now you got to pay to run for their test. What if they do an MRI or an X-ray? Well, so again, you don't know that day one, and nobody does. Nobody has a crystal ball. And then what if you start talking surgeries, or what those damages are significant? Even like a wrongful death where people die, right? Okay, well, we don't have to worry about medical bills because they're dead, right?
Yep.
But we don't know what their earning capacity is right away. Well, I make so much a year, or they made so much a year. Well, that doesn't really tell you their earning capacity and what they were worth, and as well as when you get to loss of consortium, which is now the person that I love, I'm not able to love anymore because they're now dead. So you still don't know the value of a wrongful death the first day, because it takes time to put those economic damages together.
Have you had a situation where the injury seemed severe at first, but the settlement wasn't as high as expected?
We've had cases, and it's not uncommon where you have cases where the injury seems severe, but then they turn out not to be as severe as thought. My shoulder really hurt, and you look and they run all kinds of tests and MRIs, and there is no tear. There's nothing there, So that type of scenario happens, but that's again why you get checked out. That's why you go to the specialist to see, is this something that's going to go away in a few months, or is this something that's going to require surgery to be repaired? But I would say the biggest issue, to go to your point, let's say you do have somebody with a major injury, shoulder tear, back tear, slipped discs, something really serious, but we don't have much insurance on the case. The person who hit you doesn't have much insurance. You don't have much insurance. Absolutely. That will, a lot of times then you're capped by the policy limits of what you have and what the person who hit you have, which is why we've talked about on previous podcasts about covering yourself with uninsured motorists for those situations.
On the flip side, are there situations where like a less severe injury might result in a higher settlement or verdict because of certain circumstances?
As hard as the insurance companies fight you on major injuries,
I really don't. Real hard, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if there have been cases where little injuries have resulted in a lot of money. But I will say that yeah, sometimes there have been cases, where I've had cases and they come in and you think, oh, it's probably not a great case. These injuries, again, when the day you're in, they're describing the injuries. They don't sound, it sounds like, okay, well, in my opinion is always, well, let's look into it. Let's work it. Let's investigate it and see what it turns out. And then, yeah, it does turn into either a bigger injury or a bigger settlement than we thought, because, sometimes, I think I've told this story before. Our client gets rear-ended and her shoulder just kept bothering her. And so she finally got and it was really just a typical rear end crash. It wasn't super high speed, but it was probably like 30 or 40 miles an hour. It didn't crush the entire trunk, but it was a pretty good damage.
But it wasn't a slight bump.
It wasn't a slight bump, but it made it cause significant, pretty decent damage, but it wasn't a total. Those cases where you get rear-ended and like the trunk is all the way in the hood, those are significant. This one was, it damaged it, but it wasn't a salvaged car. They were able to fix it. But she kept, having this nagging injury on her shoulder, and it turns out, she did tear her shoulder, and the doctors attributed it to the crash. And she had never had problem with that shoulder. She never had any issues with it, and it took 2-3 months, and finally there's a tear, and and it was and we had an expert who said, it's typical with the seatbelt when you get forward and back. That was one of that's one of those cases where when they walk in, it just sounds like your typical rear end accident, but it turns into a lot more.
How do insurance companies evaluate the value of a claim? Is there anything clients can do to ensure they're getting the compensation that they deserve?
That's just a loaded question right there, man. You want me to? I hope some insurance adjuster isn't watching this one day and thinking,
well, don't give away your trade secret.
They have a job to do. Every insurance company is different how they evaluate things and how they come to their conclusions. They're kind of a check the box type business. Okay, is there this? Is there that? And then they come to evaluation. But a lot of times too, insurance companies are assessing their case value based on risk. So even if you have a lot of pain, even if you have a lot of bills, if there's a higher insurance or a mid-level insurance, and they're like, we can get away with not having to pay the entire amount, they're going to do it. And a lot of times too, if you have really high bills and it's a very low, they're just going to tender their policy, and then you have to figure out who gets paid with what's left over or what you have. But insurance companies are risk averse. They look at it like, if we go to trial and we lose really bad, what is our exposure? And they're going to give you a fraction of that.
And what are the factors that really kind of impact how much a case is worth? Or I'm sure there's a lot, but maybe what are the biggest factors that impact the value?
Yeah, your bills, your health insurance is entitled to, reimbursement. So we have to get money that we have to pay, that they get paid back with. Your doctor bills, your loss of earnings, your lost wages, those affect the case. But really the biggest thing is the pain and suffering. What's the significance of your injury? Did you have brain injury, traumatic brain injury, concussions? those, did you lose, I've had a client where he lost an eye. That's, pretty significant. Yep. Clients where they've lost digits, they lose a finger or something, depending on what it is, and then obviously wrongful death. Those are obviously the most significant, biggest cases you can get. Pain and suffering. Where's the pain and suffering? What part of your body? What is your quality of life? One of our biggest wins was our client was really, she was in shape. She was, I think she was in her mid 40s, but she always ran marathons. I mean, we had documentation of marathons or the triathlons. She was in really good shape. She was very active bicycling. And for almost 2 years, because of the injury because it was a T-bone, the injury to her hip prevented her from doing it. And we had documentation. She had medals, and we ended up getting a really, really good settlement amount for her on that one because of the documentation of the quality of life that she suffered from this injury.
Wow. That's interesting. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I mean, if that's your livelihood that's taken away from you for 2 years, that's a long time.
Yeah, and it's not really. I mean, it wasn't really her livelihood. It was her enjoyment, use and enjoyment of what does she do in her spare time with her spare time. What does she do for fun? Well, she can't do that anymore. We live here in the desert. There's people who horseback ride. If you can't get on the horse and that's your enjoyment, that has value to it for sure.
I saw that there's a guy in Europe who ran a marathon every day in 2024. Every day. That was his goal, and he achieved it.
I don't know how he does that without injuring himself.
Or just falling dead. I mean, that's insanity.
Yeah, my body doesn't hold up that. I mean, man, I get shin splints, just after a mile.
Do things like does the witness testimonies or medical documentation, the quality of medical documentation, do these kind of things impact how much a case is worth?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. Medical documentation is huge. Your doctor, the way your doctor writes a report can change the value of a case in immense ways. Which is why a lot of times, you go to obviously you're stuck with the ER, you're stuck with the ER doctor you get when you get in an accident. And a lot of those guys, I mean, they're busy and they are check the box, and they are their job is to make sure you're not going to die and then send you off to someone else. I mean, and that's what emergency room doctors do.
That's their job.
And that's fine. Hey, God bless them. It's a very tough job, but when your personal doctor, he writes a report and is more detailed, that carries a lot more weight than, a doctor that you maybe see once. And that's why we want doctors, and you want to go to a doctor who is going to take the time to understand your pain and understand your rehab to get you back to where you were.
A lot of people worry about hiring an attorney from a cost perspective. How do you address concerns about legal fees, and how do you ensure clients know what to expect in terms of the costs and the potential outcomes?
Well, I think, personal injury, we have the best deal for anybody who has to deal with an attorney, right? I mean, if you need an attorney, they want money up front, they want a retainer, you got to pay them. And then every time you call, every time you need something, they're going to charge you for it.
The clock runs, yeah.
Yeah, the clock, you're on the clock. We don't, and personal injury attorneys don't charge anything until your case is over. So, and we work on a contingency. So the more you get, the more we get. And you don't even have to pay the cost. We pay the cost of all the experts, the filing fees, medical records. And medical records a lot of times can be very, they can run $1,000 sometimes, depending on how intense they are, how big they are. I mean, you can get a stack of medical records from one hospital be this thick.
Yeah. So
we pay it all, and then you just pay us back at the end. I think one misconception is people always say, well, you're taking a third of my money, but we really don't. We're getting you more money than you would get on your own. And my goal is always to put more money in your pocket that you would get if you went and hired somebody else or did it yourself. And every single case I have, I always work to that goal of putting more money in your pocket that you would get on your own. I mean, there's so many analogies and so many cases I've had where if a person handled a case on their own, that they would have just been left with very little. So we're just working to get you more. And so we're not taking money out of your pocket. We're getting you more money and putting it in your pocket and preserving that. So, and preserving your costs and preserving the money you got to pay back to other doctors as well.
And you're advocating for them and working for them. So it's doing stuff that they don't have to do or don't even know how to do and would have to research to figure it all out. And I mean, the amount of time that you would get sucked in, like just by trying to do that yourself, I can't even imagine.
It would be, it's especially on the bigger cases. And we're also looking for the deeper pockets. If no layperson, no non-attorney can handle a case with deeper pockets on their own. whether it be a government entity or a large corporation, they can't. It's just, it's not possible. And sometimes there are, on the smaller end, now there are cases where people are, you get in a small rear end accident and you go to small claims court and you get sometimes that's better. And I'll tell you, hey, look, this is a small claims case. This is probably your best bet. But when you're getting to like the bigger cases, the more complex, you need an attorney, because no person can file a complex or a unlimited civil case, an unlimited personal injury case, and come out ahead. They can't do it. I've even seen paralegals I used to work with, and they try to file their own cases and it doesn't work. They don't have the resources.
Yeah.
I've seen paralegals who, okay, you know how to file the case. That's great. Well, that's step one.
A lot more to it.
Yeah, there's a lot more steps after it, and so there's a lot more involved. And of course, don't forget, the defense, the insurance company, is going to have very experienced lawyers who know what they're doing.
Right.
So don't ever forget that, and they fight.
And they're going to look across the way and say, oh, they're representing themselves. Okay.
Correct. Yes.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning into The Moody Lawyer with attorney Josh Moody. To connect with Josh, visit moodylawyer.com, and please like and subscribe to our channel and leave us a review. Josh, always great seeing you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.